There is no investigation. This boy has...
There is not, really? It is to me.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
But I have to put her on the side and worry about
I'm gonna
the
do
boys.
what I gotta do for me and my boys and my kids.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
There is no investigation. This boy
There
has...
is not, really? It is to me. Right. Idiot.
I've done my best. It's hard, you know, that's real tough.
But I have to put her on the side and worry about the boys.
I'm gonna do what I gotta do for me and my boys and my kids.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
Live from the NBD Production Studios, you're in the lab with your host, Joshua Diaz.
There is no investigation. This boy
There
has...
is not, really? It is to me. But I have to put her on the side and worry about the boys.
What's happening? Good to see you. Thank you for being here.
There is no investigation.
Should be an interesting show.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
Mary, good to see you.
But I have to put her.
Good to see all.
Put her on the side
It's-
and worry about the boys.
As we're waiting for our guest, and she'll be here shortly, it's important to remember that this chat isn't a chat where we're gonna just call people, you know, handicap and stupid, and you know that's reserved for the people that you know, enjoy talking about other people like that. We just keep it normal. You know, you have an opinion, have your opinion. You don't need to be rude because it'll just get you tossed tonight, especially. And I don't want that. I want people to just, you know, take it for what it is, and to be kind, because we've had enough. You know, the last 2 or 3 days, you know, I've been cussed out. Jodiesue, who is our guest tonight, and that's what she is. She's an invited guest onto my show by me. And by the way, you know, this is something that Jodiesue and I have talked about for a long time, doing an interview. And I don't think the time was ever, you know, right. And I, you know, I kind of respect, I knew that she was going through a lot of things, and that it has been difficult on her. So like I said, it's something that I believe, like I said, it's been kind of I've talked to Jodiesue on panels before. I've talked to her off the air before. You know, I have, and you know, I have never really formed an opinion other than I never once thought that she or her family were involved in the disappearance of Summer Wells. And if you did not catch her interaction last night with Don on the, I think it was on Prayer Gardens last night, it was something. It was a culmination of 2 years of frustration, but not just that. Not just that. Yeah, and we'll get all into it. We'll see, how long, I am curious how long that they had known each other. And she said some very interesting things that really didn't get explained because of the heat of the moment. There was a lot of it. And it was something, like I said, it was just, I don't know. I don't know. But here's what I do know. And there she is. And I'm going to drop the link for, now obviously this link is for Jodiesue only. Because we're not doing an open panel. And let's see. And then once she takes that link, if somebody wants to just get rid of that, we'll talk all about it. Because there's a lot of angst and so we'll just, like I said, we'll talk about the whole thing, and it'll be follow up, wow, it was explosive. It was seemed to be a lot of truth being spit one way and a lot of denial, which is kind of standard for Don, and he was not happy. Maybe the first time I'd ever seen him quote unquote rage quit, which is more of a like Call of Duty term. Like let me star some of these here. I'm sorry, I don't want to miss you guys. And all right, there she is. Jodiesue, welcome.
Hey, Josh.
How you doing after last night? You hanging in there?
I am.
Good. Did it feel kind of liberating a little bit?
I don't know about that. I think it'd probably take me like an eternity to feel,
Right. Well, I mean, look, as somebody that's been on the receiving end of that filth and vile talk, and I don't blame you one bit for standing up for yourself the way that you did. It's never fun when somebody talks to you like that. It's whatever. I've only been talked like that to a few times in my life, and like 3 of them are from Don. And so I get it. It's frustrating, but you lived next to Don and Candace for years, correct?
Yeah.
How long?
We lived there for like a decade, a little over, and they lived there less than that. And Josie was 12. They had already had second. They were probably only there like 6-7 years, something like that.
Right. Okay.
But, well, I mean, it wasn't like they had been there for like maybe a year or two prior to Summer's youngest brother being born, right? So maybe close to what we had, but not, too far off from there, because she was pregnant with Summer when I met her, and Summer's youngest brother was still in diapers and very young.
So you had said some things. You obviously said a lot of things last night, and a lot of things were thrown in between you and Don, and there's history there, and I understand that. And I don't know how long you and I have known each other, but it was probably 6 months to Summer missing, and we've had several conversations off the air, conversed off the air, and we have talked about an interview for just kind of getting together and talking for some time now. And I always thought like it was never a good time just because I knew that you really did. You do, and you have, and you're still doing it, towing the line when it comes to just flat out saying, hey, look, they're guilty or they're innocent. I mean, you've never, you say that, yeah, they look guilty, they act guilty, but you don't know if you don't know exactly what, and you've always kind of towed that line, which I've always respected. And I know that you've been interviewed by law enforcement. That's no secret. And people realize that. But it seemed like the frustration last night that came out of you was because of the targeting of your family, correct?
Yeah, not just my family. And I know a lot of people, when I say, us, whatever, my kids, whatever, to me, I'm still speaking about it broader because it's not just us. It's others around Summer's case. They've done this too. It's the community they've changed forever. Generations of people will be affected by what C&D and the targeting and all that stuff have done. Not including the trauma to the community from Summer vanishing. And I mean, all of Summer's church families, because there were many. And there are many who care for her, and they are just doxing the entire community and hurting people that want nothing but the best for Summer and the best outcome possible and justice served. But it's the targeting of an entire community,
Right?
And the closest to Summer's case, and it's quite disturbing. And to push us to levels and to hear these people admit that they're willing to go to any lengths, even if it means our deaths, basically, that's disturbing, and it should disturb everyone.
So you said something last night while talking to Don, and you were talking about how they were laughing about other people being investigated for the disappearance of Summer, and that included the media manager, Tim Mullins. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I was saying that Tim, there's audio of him, and recordings of him, even him and BK and other, people, where they're laughing about the targeting of even people like Ernie, or that Candace is enjoying it in the background. They're like, man, she's sick. And Tim's like, yeah, they're, they are what they are, but we got to let them run, right? And then he's like, oh, I'm being recorded, and all these things. He acts like he's like, he thinks they're guilty, but he's in it for something. So he's like, oh, wait, hold on, I'm supposed to be a friend. I might be being recorded, but he clearly is laughing with BK and many others, and thinks it's funny what they're doing, and it's like a video game or distant, or there's not real people in real lives. But even having Ernie hunted and set up the way he was and potentially causing his death or harm to him and others throughout this, and knowing that Candace and Dawn are playing in it, admittedly so, and that they're all working together as a unit with Tragedy Pants there to do what they're doing. It's pretty sickening that you hear Mullen laughing about it, and then them talking about how C&D are laughing about it. And I mean, I've seen them laugh about the games they play, including, I was like on the hill still living there when they played the Mary hoax,
Yeah.
And so I've seen many varieties of it, including them sending feds out here with stuff they know was not said or done, all this other stuff, and twisting and turning just to target us. And they know that in doing so, even though they're lying to the feds to do that, and having those calls, make all this other stuff, it's taking time off of their own daughter's case, and that she's missing. They don't find a.
So let's talk about the day that Summer went missing, and I'm sure that you remember it vividly. You've never been shy about talking about the scream that you and your family you and your children had heard. Do you know what time about that was?
Somewhere around 4:30, 4:42. You could pull it back by a couple of minutes from 4:30, but not by much. And you really can't go past the 4:42 mark.
And do you still believe that had something to do? I mean, I know that you don't know, but in your heart, you believe that that's something that was related to Summer, going missing or getting hurt or something.
Something.
Okay.
Know that we're asked about it repeatedly. No explanation given for. I know that I know people are always like, well, does she know about coyotes or big cats or this or that? Or Josh, I've lived in the woods my whole life, and even as a little one, I'd get out here where I'm at now and, frolic through the woods in the middle of the night. Like, I know my noises and sounds and animals, and I mean, you name it, I know the sound of it. This was not a coyote. This wasn't these wasn't a bear or a big cat, and I ticked one of those off a few nights after Summer vanished out in the dark, listening, waiting, seeing if through the night, seeing if you'd hear her voice somewhere as things quieted, or for clues or sounds or anything,
Who came to get you to tell you that Summer had went missing?
Nobody came to get me. I was already going down, to meet Monster, right?
So he called you. So how did he find out that Summer was missing?
When he pulled up down there.
So nobody called you guys, the neighbors. Nobody said, "Hey, have you seen Summer?" Nobody did that.
Nope, not until Candace, at 6:09, I sent the last message where satellite service, the Wi-Fi ends on our driveway. I sent it, and I was like, well, I'm going down here and roast flowers. That way he couldn't mess about, right, for long.
Mm-hmm.
And I could kind of push, that from happening. So I was like, well, I'm going to go down and mess about flowers. That was at 6:09. I could hear Candace and them yelling. By the time I get to the bottom, it had picked up in a way, like, I don't know, the emotion or something behind it a little bit. And so as I reached the bottom, I'm like, well, it's too many calls, but, but I still walked across to where, you can see in the pictures when some of the tragedy pimps visited the hill, you see the yellow trash can sitting there.
Right.
So I crossed over there, kind of looked down. I was like, well, and then I wandered across, and then by this point, there's more movement and more noise, more intensity, and it's just feeling not okay, right? I knew Summer should have answered in this time. But, I tried to yell up at Candace and them, and they should have been able to hear me. As they were circling at the top of the house, you could tell it's what they were doing, was circling around, up there.
So
and
you said 6:09. Sorry to interrupt, but that's before the initial 911 call went in, correct?
Yeah.
So you were up there when she called 911.
No, I was not up on their hill that day.
No. So the 911 call was at 6:26, right?
Yeah.
And then what time did you end up on the hill, to help look for Summer?
I never went up on the hill.
You stayed down.
I stayed down.
Okay. So you didn't hear her call 911. You didn't hear Candace call 911 or anything like that. But you're familiar with Candace not calling from her phone, but from her mother's?
Look, all I know is that, at a certain point, I hear everybody come together sort of in the front and center, as if you're at the bottom and you're kind of looking up there at the front and center of everything. And I hear, what did you do? What did you do? And the nothing mama. And then I could hear the boys immediately hit and start going down the left side towards that part of the creek, right?
All right. Let's stop right there, because I think that is important. And that's something that you've always what did you do? When you heard that, was it a yell? She said, what did you do? She screamed it.
Yeah.
And it was the oldest that said, nothing, mama, nothing.
Yeah. Nothing, mama. Nothing, mama. I swear.
Okay. What do you make of that?
A few things.
Because I think that that's just completely an odd question to ask or say if you believe that your child had been abducted immediately. I mean, and that's just the facts. That's weird to say that.
It is weird, yeah. Unless, of course, you're trying to maybe make kids feel guilty for something that's not their fault. Their sisters just vanished, and you want them to believe they're somehow responsible, or or other things, But yeah, I've always thought that was a little weird, especially since you have the WJHL piece where Grandis is apparently, before Candace even come down the driveway and never seen me, and Dawn never said so somebody took my baby girl,
Right.
Apparently, according to Grandis on the WJHL thing, before the boys ever even went down the left side, right, where I heard them go, they all thought Summer had been kidnapped already. How they would think that without searching the other property or bottom or the boys had, it's beyond me, but that's what they thought, apparently. But yet she's screaming, what did you do? What did you do? But, they did have a habit, it seems like, especially the eldest and others, of making them feel like Summer vanishing was their fault.
Right. And who knows in that chaotic situation, but so you hear that, then the 911 call goes in at 6:26. What was it like when the police showed up? I mean, was it just an overwhelming presence at first?
No, because Dawn, Monster, and the cops all kind of at the same sort of moments, right? They're coming and going. There was two at first, and they come in, and I could see one parked on Simpson Road. The other, I think, went straight up, to the driveway, whatever. But Andy had stopped right before the cops had, and he had talked to Candace. I could see him talking to Candace at the stop sign at the end of Ben Hill. Then he starts to come my way, right? And I walk back up towards the guardrail on the main Beach Creek road, right? And I kind of wave at him, and I'm like, Summer's missing, etc. He's like, I know. I was like, well, I've seen you down there talking to her. I just wanted to make sure, right? And I could hear some of their conversations. So that's how he kind of found out, was by Candace, really, first. Then he runs into me, and I tell him, and then you can hear the cops, the dogs lighting up through Beach Creek, which always means the cops are coming. They start passing Andy. Dawn's coming in at that point. Dawn starts coming in and out. But the first two cops, they pull in. Back there, I continue on my path, looking for Summer. I can see the boys visually. I'm the other neighbor out there searching, and then the other neighbors are starting to come in. And so, yeah, I mean, it was.
Did you see Dawn? What time Dawn pulled up?
It had to be
right past you.
It had to be close to. So let me see. I was going to drive it like you're looking at close to 7.
Right, which would make sense because the 911 call goes in at 6:26. He says that he's 40 minutes away or so, but that he got the call that Summer went missing around 5:30, and that he got there before. I've heard him say he got there before the cops. Now I don't know how that would be possible.
Well, it was like, because Andy's coming. I just don't think Dawn seen it first. It was just kind of chaos at that point. You could go back to earliest bids and
Yeah.
see exactly those moments because I mean, things are starting to whatever, but yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, kind of like almost a clash at one time in a way, right?
Yeah, that makes sense because but the timeline that they have given obviously doesn't match up that well. I mean, it's problematic, and I'm sure that most people understand that, and I'm sure law enforcement understands that, and I believe that Don himself understands that because I've had that conversation with him. Is it just doesn't make sense? The timeline is off. It is, but could that be just from confusion and chaos? Sure, I guess.
No, because the the first one's in, right? They're standing up on the driveway and they were trying to get all the radios, also their stuff ready, blah blah blah. As other community members who were trained searchers were like, "Nah, bro, I'm bypassing that, and we're going searching," And but they were starting out, and you could hear them saying, "Well, she's reported missing at 6:30." And I was like, and other neighbors are like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! She's been missing since she had to be missing before 6:09, right?" So, we were like, "Hey, sirs, no, she ain't been missing no damn 10 minutes, and she went missing, had to be before 6 or 6:09 because I already heard him yelling for her, right?" At the time, I didn't have like the phone in the hand. I hadn't had airtime on yet because that came later, but I knew damn good well it wasn't, and so did the other neighbors. Like, no, that ain't right, And so we tried to tell them they were already starting on the wrong time, but
Mhm.
I'm like,
Right. So Dawn gets home, and was Andy up there on the hill with Dawn?
at a certain point that evening, after they kind of, we had searched and the train searchers were taking over, but community members were still left. But I knew because it already been over what they'd been over, right, with the other neighbors.
Right.
And so they were starting to question, they were starting to do all things, state police starting, but we were all told to kind of stay where we were in the rows and things, waiting on interviews and all this stuff. And there was a point there, obviously nobody was loud on 110. The cops had kind of stated that, but Monster's like, meh, I'm gonna go up there anyway and help, like he cared. But yeah, and later on I know that cops were like, hey, wasn't that, when they were gonna violate him on orders, they're like, hey, wasn't that nice guy that helped us search there on top of it? I was like, you mean when he was told not to be up there and he went up there anyway? That one, yeah. Yeah. They're like, oh my god, okay, but we're doing this anyway, because what an asshole, but yeah, sorry, I forgot, no cussing on your channel. Anyway, it's a habit. So he went up there for a little bit, and I guess helped search the shop. I never did go up there. I told him not to, but you know how well that works. So,
And it's not no cussing. It's just really like, we just trying to, it's the F word really, but
F's and stuff.
yeah, which is fine. Okay. So he goes up there. Him and Dawn are friends, correct? Or they were. I don't know if they still are.
I think they still have contact.
Okay, but they were friends sort of before
More,
Summer went missing.
they actually, I mean, he'd swear he hated them, whatnot, blah blah blah. But you can see it, there's just stuff in the background there. They were definitely tighter than anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Right. No, I understand that. And so at what point, I heard you say last night, did you feel like they were giving up on searching? Because you said that you said to Dawn, don't give up.
within a couple hours of summer vanishing, about the time they started to set up the command post, things started getting a little quieter in the road. Everything been kind of cleared. The helicopter had done been up. It was flying, all that, but they were concentrating on that point at doing the command post setup at Mount Carmel, and everybody was hungry, I guess, and they were bringing in food and such. So everybody kind of took off down there. It was after Fred had broken up the road anyway, so it could get unbottlenecked by everybody, and everybody could actually get in and out anyway. But Don came down the hill or whatever, but he came in the Subaru, and he was going towards Fred's, and he stops and he's talking to me. I was like, man, don't be going up there and getting no shit, dude. Like, seriously, you know? And he's like, oh, no, I'm just going to go see what, Fred
You
said.
said that to him? You said that to Don?
Yeah.
Don't go up there and get no shit. Are you talking about like drugs or something?
Yeah.
The night the day that Summer vanished.
Yeah, because I figured that's what he was doing.
Gotcha.
And anyway, so I was like, the fuck, right? Oh, sorry.
All
and
right.
Anyway, he was like, oh, no, I'm just going to go see what, and that's something, right? Like, he was just going to see if he'd seen or heard anything. I was like, well, whatever, And somewhere in that short kind of conversation, he was basically like, ah, she's gone, right? And I'm like, dude, it's only been a couple hours. And it had been by the point, only a couple hours. And I was like, man, give her a chance, dude. Like, she can, if she can get free or she can do whatever, somebody's got her, man, if she can get loose or free, she can run like the wind. Give her a chance. He's like, man, statistics. And at first it's like, well, I know how these people are. They're more base. And what do you hope as a parent, that your child's out there being tormented for who knows how long? Or do you kind of wish that, it's over quick? I don't know. It's a terrible thought, but but them being more base, maybe, and him being what he is, maybe he's thinking statistics, and I know law enforcement talks to parents, gets them ready for all possibilities, but I was just kind of taken aback, and I was like, man, I'm standing here after talking this dude into having her, and he's like, nah, she's gone, and
So
some horrible stuff.
he hit you with the statistic line. Statistically, he said that.
No, I'm just saying, like, now he did later on, but
yeah, no, because he's hit me with that later on as well. I was just okay, fair enough.
But that night it was just, well,
And what was Candace doing?
She was up on the hill.
Okay, so you didn't see.
I didn't see Candace again, not in person, for a couple days. I would see her come and go from the hill with police or with Robin and David or Grandis or whatever, and law enforcement, that type of thing. But for a couple days I didn't see Candace in person.
Okay, so all the players around there, and by that I mean, so you have Robin, you have David, you have Fred. Did you see all of them that day?
I seen Fred that night. He was the one that broke up the road because they weren't going to let him in, and then he just pushed his way in. He had a trailer behind him, I think a bike on it or something, and he pushed past law enforcement to get in. It broke the road up to where other neighbors that have been stuck in there with their vehicles and things trying to help. Give
me one second, Jodiesue. Hey, mods, in the chat, I don't want to be repeatedly like deleting comments. If people are rude, you can just boot them and we'll deal with it later. Because they're just going to keep repeatedly saying rude things, and I'm just not really here for it. They can grind their axe somewhere else. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and So I seen Fred come back in at some point that way early that day. I'd heard his truck go out, right? Because at the time he drove like this yellow truck, whatever, but it was fairly loud. It was a piece of whatever. It was pretty distinct. And I had heard him, but I don't remember really kind of what time. It was, quite a bit before, as I recall, at least, because it didn't really super stick, I don't think, unless Ellie very early on that's the same thing and it's down there. I don't think it's something that's super stuck about what time I heard him. But it wasn't like, in the evening time or anything when I heard him. It was far earlier in the day when I heard him leave out, and then he come in late that evening and night and pushed past the cops, and he didn't have ID to show to get in and all that. And he was like, "Nah, I'm good. You're gonna let me in anyway." Pushed in and broke up the traffic. And I talked to him as he come by because my soul, Andy had parked it quite close to the roadway because just the angle of it and everything. And I asked Fred, I was like, "Hey," because he had his window down, arm out. I was like, "Do you want me to move it a little bit, seeing it through?" Because he was literally like an inch from like running me over at the edge of the driveways we waited. And he didn't really speak. And then I think the next day, very early on, I seen him at the bottom of the driveway. He was coming down. It was very weird what was occurring, started occurring pretty quickly into the days after. But yeah, I started seeing Fred quite a bit. But also Fred was staying all the way out of there after we all felt like there was something funky up with goofies and the targeting of people in there in real life, real time.
Right. So on a show that Don, people always say, "Oh, Don, you invited Don on panel." Well, Don's really been invited on panel maybe once. He kind of crowbarred his way in the one time. And he said that, they had him and Candace separated and that they were questioning him. The forensics teams were questioning them. And they said to Candace, "What did you do? We want to know what you did with your daughter." And he says, right before he says that, he says, "I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say this." And then that's what he says. And then apparently Candace tells him, "Well, then I cussed him out and I said, you blah, 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 blah."
We heard similar.
That was what was going on.
Well, when the polygraphs happen and stuff, you hear Don say, "Well, Candace felt like it was a competition." He's like, "Oops, maybe I shouldn't do that." Because he's like, "Oh, I passed mine, but Candace felt hers." "Well, I did also pass mine either." So, type of garbage. But
so he told you that Candace failed hers and that he passed his. When was that?
Very quickly and early on after summer
rain. A few days.
Wasn't even that. It was within like a couple days there, yeah. And I swear I want to tell you it was like the second or third day. But we were standing once again down the bottom of the driveway, yellow trash can. There'd been another Fred contact moment there, just like the second day and so on and there forth. But he had said that he changed stories throughout as the days went by on why they failed this sooner. But the first things were that, Candace felt hers, whatever. But then later on, he come back with the whole. And Candace told me this too, that a female agent had basically slammed her up against the car. This and was screaming at her, "You've killed your daughter. You've killed your daughter. We know it. Where is she? What have you done with her? We know it's you." And they had her in tears, and she was crying, and she couldn't even breathe. And then they slammed her in the back of the cop car and took her to take polygraph. And then she failed it because they had her so upset.
Mm-hmm.
And that next day is when she runs to Hunter's and asks what he's told him because she failed her polygraph. And then eventually she passes it, I guess. I don't know. But their stories changed. But much like Dotson, I was told a similar story to Dotson on how many times and what they were you know, how many polygraphs.
David Dotson told you this?
Actually, there's a recording around here because early on, I guess he was going to be their PR guy till he got smart and got out, or he got booted because he was telling far too much truth. But there's a
Really?
recording of it with him on, and you can't get many pieces of them, but others did the review, so they're still up, but it's from that one channel, and I can't remember the names, but they did a lot of the early stuff, and then they split up, and now it's very hard to get pieces from them. But David's
When's the
been
last time you talked to him?
who
Dotson.
I never spoke to him. I might have talked to him in the road, like after Summer vanished for like brief moments or something. But I never saw those people there before. I never heard Candace and Dawn mention him. Neither did Andy. The night they showed up when Summer vanished, I know that Summer's other church families and stuff from inside of Beach Creek and otherwise were in there trying to help. And we're helping and had credentials and things. But the thing is, David and Robin show up at a certain point, and they were out there making such a spectacle that even Andy took note and came up to me at the bottom of the driveway and was like, "Who are these yahoos out here, dude?"
Spectacle in what way?
That Andy even told them to F off, because what they were doing was they were asking Andy, I guess, he was like, "Man, they're out here asking me crazy stuff, like intimate stuff about what's going on here, extreme stuff about, you know, I guess details, wanting to know every little thing." And Andy's like, "I don't know these people, but they're trying to get in here." And even the other community members were like, "Who are the freak shows out there?" You know, and cops wouldn't let them in until everything was basically cleared out. And then you watched one vehicle go up, and it kind of pancaked. Like, there was one Subaru, then Dawn and Candace's red, and then another Subaru. They all went up the hill. And then after that, I guess they stayed with them along with law enforcement that night and through the night.
So it sounds like what you were talking about was from a channel called Unmasks. I do kind of vaguely remember that. So Dotson got there before Robin did, correct?
I don't know. I wasn't out on that piece to see, but I know that Andy had seen it and seen him out there, and other community members did, but they definitely didn't arrive till dark or later at night.
Right.
And the helicopter was done up and flying back point, roads saturated, cops blocking off things. There was a no-go, you know, on everything, cars being searched. You weren't getting in and out of the road without ID, you know, that type of thing. Yeah. Searches in there. Yeah.
When did you get officially questioned?
Oh, it was an immediate thing. Like I stopped, I stopped like the third or fourth in. He was in like an SUV style instead of like the squad car style. And I was like, I heard a scream, you know, and I've been looking for whatever. And then I also talked to another neighbor and all these, but they, it wasn't long before we were all, you know, we were told to stay in place at our respective driveways and things, right? And that's kind of what we did, just to hang out down there. And it was initially it was like Hawkins and all the surrounding police departments. Very short order. It was state police, like, you know, Tennessee State Highway, you know. And then eventually through the night, they finally let us out to get something to eat around midnight. I have exact timestamps for it and stuff. But feds show up, and they went up the driveway, and my eldest was there, and he had messaged, and he was like, "The feds are here," and they said to get back here. I was like, "Man, they just let us go like 10 minutes ago. Can I grab food?" And he asked, and they said, "Yeah, you know, do whatever." So he got food, come back in there, grabbed Dawn and Candace's cigarettes, stuff like that too. They'd need through the night. And we hauled ass back in, and you know, then we're interviewed by them. But it was thing. It was not just, oh, that night and that was it, right? This was an ongoing everyday thing with profilers, FBI, TBI, detective after detective for, and yeah, this was nonstop for a long time every day. And it was for other neighbors and things. It was nothing, but it would, like, one team would come through, plus then eventually you have like specialized units like the card teams, all those that come in. You had the head FBI agents and all those they talk about, and yeah, that come in with command centers and all these.
And I want to welcome in everybody that's just showing up here. Jodiesue Brown, ex neighbor of Don and Candace, was there in the area, well, at her house the day that Summer went missing. And I also want to say something else. I see people in the chat saying, "Hey, ask this, ask that." I have a layout. I'm going to get to the questions. I've got some of the stuff starred, so I will get to them. Also with your chats and stickers. However, I do want to say this, talking about white noise, and I'm the one asking the questions. So, if you have a problem with the questions, that's on me. And I'm going to interview the way that I want to interview, and I'm going to ask the questions that I want to ask. And if there's time, we'll whatever. But I'm just saying, thank you for your concern. Okay, so moving on. Last night, when you confronted Don, what was it that set you off? Because, it was highly emotional. There's no doubt about it. But what was it that, because you've had this, I'm sure you had the maybe you haven't had the opportunity. I don't know. Was it just the opportunity presented itself? This is 2 years in the making.
That he or she was on, they would have enjoyed that this entire 2 years, and they've tried to triangulate it. I'm well aware of that. It's why, I just don't, and I didn't want us crossing lines or ever coming in contact, just to keep things unblurred. But, last night, it happened to be that I'd been on an hours-long phone call with others that are genuinely trying to help Summer. And it's pretty emotional the way it was. And then we're kind of informed he was running amok. Things have been mentioned. He had hit PGs. And whatever, we're like, oh God, to watch. And when I come into the room, there he was, and he was saying something about, it was some sort of lie about whatever, the trafficker, some garbage. So actually, I think it was some other, I don't know. He said something, it was a lie, and about you, I don't know. But he knew I was in chat because I commented something about, well, then he could go to 14 or 15 police departments a day instead of 14 or 15 YouTubes a day. And then he just full out lied about the traffic and all that, saying there was traffic coming from 125. I was like, oh no, he ain't. And then he let out full targeting with the, and he mimicked me, right? Which is that where I always tell people, and I know this, I even was like, with law enforcement, and if you've watched even basic CSI, people who commit crimes like this often watch the things or revisit or whatever, right? And so I always kind of say, the person or persons responsible are probably watching this circus. Anyway, so he kind of, he says, yeah, he or she is watching. It was like a suspect. I'm like, oh, I get you hit, wink, right? But when he said that about the traffic, and I just, nope, he's not going to stand there and harass, terrorize, direct more stuff at us with lies and slander and garbage and make everybody in that community somehow these magical giant, meth dealers, right? and that's not true. And he's trying to make the whole of that community look like it is just like Breaking Bad version of Wizard of Oz. Okay? And I'm done with it. And even though, like, Monster's Monster, I'm not going to stand there and let him lie on him or anybody else like that. Now, what else they were getting up to in their own spare time, I don't know. But what I do know is there was no traffic at 125 coming or going. I can count on both hands how many people in the entire decade plus we lived there that ever visited or came back and forth. And so Dawn said that was it for me. I was like, nope. And then, PG's like, oh, you ain't got the whatever if you don't come up. I was like, man, it's pretty much 2-year-old stuff. I was already on the way up. So I went up, and the rest is kind of YouTube history, right?
Right. So, I mean, you said some telling things there. You had mentioned specifically that. Well, let me play something for you really fast. I just want you to hear this. This is Candace giving a list of suspects, probably, I think, 8 or 9 months ago.
Man, I'm not 150% of chance of anything doing with this. I don't know. I can't tell you because I don't know. I have a lot of suspicion. I have a problem with Allie, Jose, Jodiesue, Andy, Donnie. I mean, I could list a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. So in there,
Ernie asked her if she had any suspects. She said no. He's like, anybody you're suspicious of? And she's like, well, and then she's like, well, I have problems with. She doesn't say that there are suspects or she's suspicious of them. She says she has problems with them.
But she was kind of insinuating, but I mean, that's what she was insinuating.
Oh, yeah, but by the time she'd already full out to Nerdy Addict and others, even knowing that what she was doing with them was full out lying and targeting us very early on behind the scenes and having us targeted, tormented, and lying about us, And, but, so that was just, but if you notice, that list, meets up with, the same people over that they've targeted. That really the only ones that make sense on it are her saying Dawn.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, and then why did she include Dawn? Is that what Dr. Phil and the behavior panel are like, hey, you're leaking knowledge? Does she think Dawn has, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, but that's really the only one on there that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Right. So talk a little bit about the following days with Dawn and Candace. Were you getting visited regularly by law enforcement, and were they? And I noticed that you said last night that Ellie was saying, "Hey, like we think it's them," correct?
Yeah, I mean, we heard from like day 2 onward, even for months, even past their polygraphs and things, that everybody pretty sure they were guilty and they did it. And
this comes from, I don't want you, but law enforcement officials that were investigating the case, and they said to you, yeah, we're pretty sure that they're guilty.
I heard they're guiltier than fucking sin. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. It's fine. Wow. How did you feel about that?
Even it's like, I don't know. Like, is it just because they're Jerry Springer? Is it just because they are what they are that they look that way, even if they're not? But then as things went down the line, and especially after some of the stuff that Monster and his camp and all them were getting up to, and the things done there, the distrust grew, and then you have C&D in there trying to set up all the stuff, I don't know, and that distrust of certain things, very much, it was like, I don't know, man,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
honestly, the longer this has gone on and the more I've seen how C and D debate, I mean, my doubt, like at first I really was. I was like, man, I don't think C did this, because of this and this and this that day and all these other things. But the more I've watched her face and the the hoaxes and the nonsense, and then willing to take away from Summer to play games and to make these nonsense calls and to target everybody around Summer's anything that isn't necessarily like a suspect, but just people that if you look at who they've targeted, talked about, put out on whatever, it's all people that know too much about them or orbited too close at some point or could, I don't know, I think they're afraid of a lot of those they target for some reason. And I wonder which one may hold the key.
Let me just ask you this question, and I don't need you to. It's really just yes or no. Do you know more than you're allowed to say that you've been told not to say by law enforcement?
Um, there are things that I know I should not say, Josh. It doesn't take a genius, and I was never explicitly taught, but there are all kinds of things I also heard. I know I was not meant to hear. Um, Things that have been told to me that probably should not have been. There are the things I heard and seen and stuff. There are things here that I cannot say without certain people who have a tendency to mimic and parrot and pick pieces and learn and gather them to build stories. Right? There are lots of things that should not be said in the open. But the law enforcement is fully aware of,
Did they search your property?
absolutely.
Yeah, and your house, everything.
Every building on it, many, 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 many times. With all the dogs, many times. With full consent to do so at any time. They even had permission from us to, if they needed to take cards or anything like that out of cams over there. Any of that stuff, they were allowed to do so at any time without even asking, doing whatever. So they could keep, I mean, like, fully cooperative and never denied them access to anything, never said no to a search, never. And I mean, I know the public thinks the searches like were over after like 2 weeks, but that's not the case. They said they were drawn back, right? But what the public is unaware of, I guess, is that they were literally in there. Even until we moved out of there, they were still in there every day searching. Coming in small little groups, but they were there and they were searching for months.
Mm-hmm. And so leading up the days leading up to that, did you notice anything, or was it just kind of came out of nowhere, blindsided, and then okay, we're in the middle of this chaotic situation? Was that basically how that went?
Before Utah, I'd felt some type of way about some things, and I was digging for maybe some proof on anything that I could to, you know, I don't know. And, but then even up, like, once, the return from Utah, all that, and it looks like, and I think I've shown the receipts for this, even up until, like, the 20 something of May, I was still digging for things. I'd found that Kingsport address that's listed to Don. I'd found his son on the registry, all those things already. But things were hitting sideways again a little bit, and I had this I don't know. Like, there was something wrong over there, but it could have been that there were many things wrong over there, just like always, right?
Yeah. Right.
But then, I still didn't expect the 15th to be anything more than an average Tuesday, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, some when things like that happen, they just kind of happen, and then everything before it kind of becomes fuzzy, you know, and even going forward. The dogs. Did you hear those dogs barking all the time, like just through the years?
All the time. Well, it was never the same pack because they would dump them off everywhere. But
Right.
that had been the longest pack there, simply because other neighbors had gotten fed up with their stuff and finding one neighbor actually, like they had adopted one of the doggies. They found it at a church dump, knew where it came from, adopted it, vet care, spaying it, all this. And it was their family pet. And I guess it got back up there one day when Candace or somebody loaded them all up, and they took it and dumped it off at Walker's again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these people went looking for their family pet. And when they did, they found it at one of the known locations where they dumped, and they went and told C&D they caught them dumping anymore. They called the police and, all this other stuff. So at that time, the dogs had been kind of left be for a while. And so, yeah, but either way, no matter which pack come and went, there was always one or two. So I could always kind of tell what they were doing, but yeah.
Right. Did you hear any dogs that day?
No.
The dogs weren't barking that day.
Nope. And they should have.
So,
Because all
you
of
think
our
they went on vacation, like Dawn said? I mean, where the hell were the dogs?
I don't know. And that's the thing. They have a tendency around there to disappear on days you think are going to be average, but then something happens. It would happen every time during like our Peeping Tom incidents, right?
We'll talk a little bit about that.
For a couple years before Summer was born, right? For a couple seasons, what was happening was Monster would go out to this job he supposedly had on Lake Middle Tennessee, but somebody was, and it was never like a super planned in advance, right? So there was no date. He would go out, he'd just come home from one place, be like, "Oh, I'm leaving. I gotta go down here, right? Work." And I'm like, whatever, And so somebody was close enough to see when he was coming and going. And knew the properties well enough to sneak up beside of my bedroom window, where at the time my daughter was only 5, 6, right? And for years I'd always believed like they were just peeping on me. But I was like, well, wait, when Monster was gone, Little was with me, co-sleeping, And so, but they were adept, and I knew the property well enough to be able to sneak. I could see their shadow moving through, right? And they was standing right at the screen, which was only like an arm's length away because they're smaller farmhouses, right? And I'd have the window open, and you could barely hear them, even though like I wasn't big on the raking or anything. They could stand right there, and you could not hear them,
Right.
but I could see them, and it was. At the time, though, I was on a medicine that was very much messing with me, and that Monster like kept forcing me to take because he knew it was why he wasn't getting caught doing what he was doing at the lake and all these other things, But so he kept trying to call me crazy, whatever. But one night I'd had enough because this person would stand there for a very long time, right? And I'd had enough. And I went outside and they ran, and I chased them down, got about halfway down the driveway. I was like, whoa, this particular medicine is a heart, like blood pressure type of medicine. And it takes away your fight or flight anyway. Not that I have much of one, but it takes it entirely away. and it's one of the side effects of it for everyone. And so not really a side effect, but a known thing that's going to happen. Anyway, I reached out to grab this person, this man, and I was like, oh dear, you've left the kids behind, and if something happens to you, they're here, you know. So I just stopped, and I turned back around and went in. But this went on off and on, you know, for a couple of years. And then Monster kept telling me I was crazy and all these things, you know, like, you know, I'm like, whatever. And then finally I was like, look, I was like, I'm not. Our dogs are disappearing, right? As this happens every time. They come back injured eventually. You can tell that there's like rope marks on them. They smell like hay. They're being kept somewhere. A couple times there'll be like cologne and things. I'm like, something is wrong here. Somebody is, you know. And it got so bad that I was finally like, look, you know, and at the same time, I was also getting these anonymous, I guess from Amazon or whatever. Amazon would not give me the name of the person, but it was stuff I'd only talked about in the house, like Monster or the kids about needing like clay softener, weird stuff, little things, right? Somebody was sending them anonymous. It was like a power move, like, you know, I hear you, you know, type. It was like, oh my God. But I was like, look, how about we take you out, or you go out in your Jeep like you're doing whatever. I'll come out a little bit, act like I'm getting groceries, whatever it is, and we'll cover you up in the back and bring you back in. Well, that's what we did. And then throughout the day and stuff, he stayed very quiet. And that night, like clockwork, and the dogs had disappeared again. Here comes this person. I was like, told you. And he chased him down, but then he lost him because he was way heavy set at the time. He turned back around to get the vehicle, and they went right towards Sullivan County side. There was a truck involved, all these things, and we called the police that night. But that went on for a couple years. But after I believe it was the one where he almost caught him, and he's always, because the next day I met Candace for the first time. I was like, what's going on here? Even then because it was like, I don't know, it seemed very strange to me that the neighbors had been over for so long, hadn't made an appearance till the day after. That's weird, right?
Yeah. I mean, of course it is.
And then John makes his appearance in the realm. But I mean, it was like throughout the year. I mean, and then I didn't know at the time that Candace was pregnant with Summer, you know, and all these other things. But then after Summer's born, I felt like it let off, you know. But then in ways maybe not. As I've looked back through patterns and things. But for the longest time until this happened, it was like, man, I felt like it was like an adult peeping in on me, but it was like, man, here she is at the same age that Summer's taken, you know? There's something, I just feel like, I don't know, right?
Right, but correct, but there's no, but you don't know who it was.
Andy's always said it was Dawn, or there's one other person, but that also, they're very good friends with Dawn. And they hang out on their hill all the time and stay there intermittently.
Why did Andy think it was Dawn?
He said that's exactly what it looked like.
Oh, so he caught a glimpse of this person.
Yeah.
Got it.
There was enough light that night where he could see him, whereas before I couldn't. Plus that medicine at that time, it very much took away my ability for like faces, things like that. It took me years. Like it even changed my handwriting, my sense of direction, all that. It changed all of that for a very long time. Monster had me at the point of, with that particular medicine, eventually it led to where it screwed with me enough to where I couldn't even feed myself or remember who I was, type of thing. And it's apparently a rare but known thing. It's also medicine they're now retraining like extreme phobics and stuff with. But it took me a couple years to get back to self, from that. But he was using it as a form of abuse, But yeah, so for me, Face is there for a long time. It's like, but
Let's there's a question here on the screen and it seems relevant. Yellow trash can service on Tuesdays. What time is the service between AM and PM? Please and thanks.
I'd have to look back at what days it was for us there on video because we had just started. I just started it, and they stopped the trash service for 10 days immediately, plus the mail.
Oh, and really? So they shut down any mail in and out?
Yeah, any mail,
and no trash service.
Yep.
Wow. I didn't know that.
No.
I mean, it makes sense.
And I didn't realize till like I went down to put trash in there one day, and I did it in front of because the meeting point for the buses as the searchers were being brought in and out was our driveway at 125, right? So they'd stand right there at the bottom of ours and or in our driveway and chill and hang out till the bus arrived. And so I went down to put trash in a trash can, and then like a couple days later, it still wasn't going. I was like, what is happening? And I think that's when they did the search warrant on Candace and Dawn's while they were going to that one vigil or whatever it was, And I guess they thought that was Candace and Dawn's trash. And I was like, hey, bros, I put that out there days ago in front of search groups, but y'all are more than welcome to it. How about it? But I didn't realize till then, like, that and I had to have another neighbor there. Like, yeah, they cut off our mail and stuff, and like my cancer meds, they're not here yet, and they turned them away at the end of the road, and it's been, chaos. I was like, wait, what? They turned away our mail and our trash, but the brush and tree crews are still all right,
But the trash would have ran by 6:26 when the 911 call went in. The trash usually is typically a morning thing, isn't it?
For them, I could look at receipts and say, and I don't even remember what day it was that they would pick up trash. At this point, it's never something I don't think I've ever really been asked.
I'm pretty sure it was Tuesday.
I don't know. I could look back in receipts and let you know, because I know, and I know I have the emails and things from the trash service when it's supposed to be done. And I know I'd have a time for it because of talk and just regular daily things.
Vet Girl says 5:30 to 6 p.m. service for Ben Hill confirmed Tuesday. So that's interesting. It's later than I would have imagined, but I live in a completely different state.
Yeah, like here, the trash service is by some of the same people, and now they've got a newer truck. Because before it was only like they would do bags and things. But it's very early in the morning here before daylight. But down there it wasn't like that.
So who told you that, like, hey, mail's not coming in here, trash? Who said that to you?
My other neighbor that recently passed cancer.
Gotcha.
I was like, you're kidding me, bro. As I recall, it was him. I was like, wait, what? Because in that conversation was mentioned that necessary cancer meds weren't getting there because of things.
Yeah, and this is a good. So Lisa Murphy says, Josh, everyone needs to remember that 2 years ago, Jodiesue Brown was very ill, going through treatments or just finishing them up. But yeah, absolutely, I'm completely very aware. And yes, I should have mentioned, but thank you for bringing that up. We've had conversations going year and a half ago. And I think that you had just either finishing up or just had finished up. And you sound a lot better now, even just speaking wise than you did back then.
Oh yeah, they still try, even though the scars faded, and it's like one of my friends where I've cut everybody off, so they're not targeted and tattooed, but one of my friends seen me for the first time, I'm like, my God, they really did leave a scar, didn't they? And I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty, it's awesome. And they're like, that doesn't show up on the panels. I actually think they were watching one I jumped on the other day, I can't remember or something, but they're like, it doesn't come across on the camera, does it? And it doesn't. If you're in person, you can very much tell that most of my neck on this side's missing, and how much they've had to transplant and take, and their scars going. But this thing goes almost from ear to ear,
Right.
And sure, you've seen it, and it's still pretty bright looking.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I still get the whole. But as it's faded, it's been easier for people to pull that whole, oh, she's intoxicated, she's slurring, we can't hear her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very cautious in the way that I keep my tone here, I've learned. If I don't, I'll lose my voice. I have to talk differently depending on whether I'm on the phone with you or whether I'm on a panel or if I'm in person. And for some reason, if I'm in person with somebody, or on the phone, it'll take my voice quicker and it'll take it a day or two to try to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be cautious about what tones I use, or I don't have a voice left at all to speak with. Because my voice left to me now is not my original, not even close. But I'm lucky to have it, and people can bite me. I'm not intoxicated. It's speechless. The nerves cut in here alone, and the things done, and the paralyzation, and all that are astounding. I'm lucky to have a voice, considering when I went under, I'd been notified 5 minutes before my scan from the day before. Things had changed to that morning, and they were then going to have to take my entire voice, that I would be muted for life. And I was like, I flipped out for a second, but then I was like, you know what? I promised Pap I'd get this stuff out of me no matter what. And that wasn't quite what happened. But I was like, okay, just do it. Just take my voice. Just do what you can,
Yeah.
My Pap. And we went in. And so when I woke up, it's the first thing I did in recovery was try to use it. And my surgeons were like, holy, we did it, right? They were like, Frankenstein.
They got it done.
Oh, they
did.
did.
I mean, that's fantastic.
I'm grateful for that. And anybody.
Mary's comment down here said Donnie got the cops called him a few times for peeping in neighbors' windows around my mom's house. He was around 17, not to mention how many times he went around and stole stuff from our family. And then Mimi comes up with a great comment and said, what exactly is Don not? So, I mean, and I get it. What people say when you say things like this is, oh, that's hearsay, or that person's not credible, or, and you can dismiss everything that way. It's easy. Okay. Oh, they have an axe to grind. They don't like Don. They feel slighted or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, these are people that actually know Don and have known Don and Candace for some time. It's not like, we're picking random people off the streets here. Take it for what it is. You don't have to believe it.
According to Don, we're all picking random people off the streets, and we're all jealous, and we all hate him, and that's the reason that we're, whatever, we're sus. We've all joined in a collective to kidnap someone. We're all guilty, bro, according to Don.
Right. Well, I mean, just as, of course, I don't think that I've ever asked Don a question that went against him, where he didn't say that wasn't a lie, or that was made up, or, it's never like, yeah, man, I did that, or whatever. Right. And that has kind of been, I would say, standard for him. I don't know.
Something I've known about him the entire time we've been around, it didn't take me. I could look at him and be like, oh, he's something. And I remember asking the detectives, because Dawn, for some reason, look, once you're around monsters for so long, you can get a feeling for them, right? Before they ever get anywhere near you. But you can always tell if one leans towards like just like domestic or like kids or like murder or what, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least. And I've been around all types in my lifetime. But I knew Dawn was something always from the first second I came near it. Just like Candace, there's still been there, you know, but I remember asking, but I never could place a finger on it. And he never could make eye contact with me either for years. Even Monster couldn't do it. Monster would wear sunglasses in the house or cars or anything because he couldn't look me in the face. But Dawn never really could either. But I knew he was something, right?
Yeah, right.
And I remember asking one of the detectives, I was like, man, for years I've known this dude, so I just don't know. I can't put it in there. Like, you want to know why? It's because he's so many types of monsters. He's one of the sickest, this, that, and the others I've ever seen in my career.
Right. Right.
So,
let's see.
and he wasn't wrong.
No, well, Jodiesue, why do you think Dawn went to the shed first? Do you find there any significance in that?
I think he was going to the shed. I think he was, for some reason, I think he somehow knew the boys would be down where they were. I think he was pulling there to see if he could get contact with the boys real quick, talk to them real quick, whatever. I don't know. I don't think it had anything to do with the shed.
Right. So you think that that's what he said? Well, I went to check the shed, but really, because the boys were supposedly down there looking.
That they were supposed to be looking, but when I seen them and the way they stayed for quite a few minutes as I made my way to them, and around the areas, they were just kind of squatted down, looking at something, and I thought, well, they've gotten distracted. They're playing, whatever. And I don't know now. But I know that they weren't actively like so. But as soon as they realized I was near them, and they popped up, and they started walking up, like almost like they went. I was like, "What in the world? That's weird for them, And I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, And I asked them about Summer, and they told me that the last place they'd seen her was a swing set. They clearly meant the swing. I asked them how long. They said, 5-10 minutes. And I was like, oh, that's not possible, right? But kid time feels different, right? Y'all remember being a kid? And I was like, okay, well, it's still a better answer than I had received off of Candace when I first run into her. So, and for me, the boys, I knew at some point I'd meet them down there anyway, and I would get a better answer and an idea of where Summer was last. And so, yeah, but it was only like the eldest that would answer for the whole group. Everybody else kept their heads. It was very odd behavior, but I thought, well, they think I'm going to tell Candace or Dawn or something. And they see all this movement and these police showing up, and they're just like, she's going to tell Mom we weren't really searching, whatever, and we're going to be in trouble. But they should have known better, because I'm not going to tell Candace not for them to be in trouble, Not like they ain't no need next. I know that they yelled at them stuff, at the very least, off and on. So it's like, nah. It just, but things in hindsight as they're playing out, But I knew right then something was a little off the behavior. But yeah, as soon as they seen I and maybe the other neighbor, because he was still there too, and we were all turning back. But I went a little bit further, but the boys went off like the middle of the cleared portion where the brush and tree cutters went through, and they were going back that way, back towards 110, and I went a little further up to like the fence line down there. It kind of runs between 110 and then the creek, but it's between them and about where Sharpie is on Simpson and all that, you know. And then I turned around and come back, and I went through the middle of the field too. By this point, everywhere's filled up with the other neighbors. But I looked for because the big equipment, the heavy equipment they use to clear cut everything and grind it down to nothing but mud. The tires they use on that equipment are heavy duty, right? And they leave the big, deep, like, square, you know what I mean? Like the
Right.
And so I was looking for those to be pressed down or anything, and never saw footprints through them, never saw anything like that. I just
So last night when we were talking and Dawn became frustrated with you, and are you familiar with the term, have you stopped beating your wife yet?
yeah.
Okay. So, when people say things like that, or they say, like it's a loaded question, how do you answer that question? When Don seems to get frustrated or pissed off and maybe somebody's getting the best of him in a conversation, typically what he goes to is, hey, I know you have Summer. Okay. And he did that to you last night, which, by the way, is incredibly irresponsible. It's incredibly sick. It's incredibly offensive to use your daughter's disappearance as a weapon in an argument. I get it when you're upset, fine, but
no, I don't get it on any level. I would never do any such thing.
well, I get him being mad that like people or whatever, but to go there is just way too far. I mean, it's sickening, to be honest with you. He's done that to me. He's done that to Chris. He's done that to Mary and Jeannie. This is what he does. Dudley. And
yeah.
Were there any like secret kind of, like he was talking to law enforcement and they'd kind of send him your way? I mean, I know that your son got dragged into a bunch of different things for no apparent reason other than people think
his group worked, and it was a form of blackmail by 423, Penny, a few others, to blackmail me if I didn't shut up about the marathon and all that. As that was going on, I was calling it out, and they said they were going to make my son look, guilty of whatever and this if I didn't cooperate, and basically go up on TMs or BKs immediately and tell them everything I knew about Summer. So I didn't do that, and Squall immediately started doing it. And they have continued to find a way to target my eldest throughout this, and both of my children, to different degrees each time. And it's still continuing. Like, there are other channels like Scam and Scallywag that still continue to do it, even though I hold proof that the dates he's wanting to stick with now are also lies, as he's moved the line and dates and the truth. They're still doing it, dude.
And obviously that's where a lot of your frustration comes from. Don and Canton. So Pruitt has said that you weren't a suspect, and I've never thought that you were a suspect ever. And
enforcement can say all kinds.
Did come out and say that,
but like months before, Beanie ever caught him recording and tried to talk over him so nobody would hear that piece. Months and months before that, Pruitt and the feds were here and volunteered the information that we were not suspects. And I told people that, but yeah, they can tell you anything. That doesn't mean,
that's a fact.
Correct. Right?
Correct.
But then for him to say that to Benny too, it's like, okay, whatever, but I think if I was truly sus, they would have honestly taken me up on my offer the first day to do a polygraph.
I'm sure.
Like, if I could help it anyway, move that forward faster, then I was going to do it, right? And I mean, it's common sense. They work from inside out, right? You're going to have the family and you're going to have the closest people. And if I can help them with the tool, clear myself or my family quicker so they can move on to other people and don't have to do full on things and waste time to find Summer. That's what I was going to do. That's what I offered. They said they didn't need one. We tried to acquire my own from world-class experts, and they have to have Fed approval because they don't want to step on toes. That's not being given. But I think if they wanted those things, they'd come get them.
Right.
And I'm open to that at any point in time. I mean, you've even heard me be like, hey, you think Chris could get me? And I've talked to Chris about it,
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. But I think also that, like you said, if the FBI and TBI, Hawkins County, wanted you to take a polygraph, they would have gave you one a long time ago.
No, it's like, I don't care. Everybody else makes this big deal of like sus or not.
Right.
I don't care as long as Summer's found, man. They can look at me all day long, every day. And it's like my son and my daughter. I know they didn't do anything here. At one point, they even had my daughter, who was like 11 or 12 or something at the time, driving the truck that we never borrowed or had possession of, my mom's, going to get me a pack of cigarettes and hitting Summer, all this other garbage, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my children were unlike some people. And I know my children, like, man, nobody on my hill did anything to cause or help with or any of the other stuff with whatever transpired on June 15th. Okay. And they're targeting 2 kids that were newly released from DV. My son's out trying to live, his life and do his things, and it's just dangerous what they're doing. They don't care. It slanders his reputation, and I've tried so hard, and that's how they end up manipulating me here in the first place, is taking photos from my daughter's first dance and her brother and I helping her get ready, and putting it as Hunter at, and all these things. And I thought I would be able to protect my children, but I didn't realize how deep and dark this game over here went. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it still continues, especially like even with last night. I mean, his defense was poor at best, and I know you guys were very heated. But the one thing that I want to talk to you about is the stop daddy whole thing. Could you hear them arguing from where you were ever?
Yeah.
Clear as day. Because I'll tell you this, Don had admitted, I believe to me, that he, and I hate to even bring this up, but I do think that it's somewhat relevant. He could hear Andy abusing you.
Yeah, it's actually my intro thing over my channel, but that's a thing. There were nights that I was being abused so badly that I'm sure Don and them could hear it, because people all the way down the valley on the main road, all the way down past Mount Carmel could hear it. And people all the way up to the Golden Line could hear it.
Yeah, he literally said, I could hear, and this is a quote, I could hear him beating the shit out of Jodiesue from where he was.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible, terrible thing. So it wouldn't surprise me that you could hear the fights going on. You said something about like that.
Actually, I think that, like, to me, that's the reason I thought there was far less violence or something over, is because I couldn't, like, I think Don and him would keep theirs somewhat inside the house, and because of their way, like, it was a little different, right? So sometimes it would depend. I think if they were upstairs, downstairs, which part of the very top, right, and stuff like that. But Don was also not one to be like full on just yelling and screaming as soon as he's beating like Monster was on me, right? And
McDonough has seen the photos of the abuse and read the reports, and I mean it's shocking. It really is shocking. And so for anybody to sit up here and say, like I said last night, I said, look, you've been abused and you've been battered and you've been treated horribly. And nobody's perfect and everybody has skeletons and things like that. Nobody deserves to get beat on ever. My mother was murdered because of domestic violence, just like you very well could have been, Candace as well, and many other women and men across the world. So it's important to understand, folks, that you may have your little snide remarks or you may feel a certain way about something, but make no mistake, this abuse was real, and it was constant, and it was brutal. Okay. I want people to understand that. And a lot of that came out last night with you saying, hey, you're not going to abuse me like I'm Candace. My grandmother, when she remarried after she was abused, anybody that kind of threatened her, she said, you're not going to do this to me anymore. You're not going to do this to me. And so I want people to really understand that this is the fact that Don could hear it and admitted it to me is crazy. And the fact that, you could hear the arguing. Now, tell me about the kids with the, so it was basically, they were saying what, dad's being mean to mom.
You'd hear it go from, like, say, Summer, right? She couldn't get him to stop, do whatever, and she would run to the next. It was like a little line until they get to Josie, and then, it's always like, you'd hear them call each other dad's being mean to mom again or whatever, and then Josie would do whatever as they got to him, or he'd protect him or keep. I don't know. I just know that's what you would hear over and over again. But they would seemingly most of the time come out of the house. I think Don very much is one of those. He's not open in public, or wasn't. I don't know. Look how world famous they are now for it. But in person, that was a no-go. But it's like whereas my monster is different. Like, he would beat me full on a roadway, trap me in the car, kidnap me, beat me for hours, beat me in front of stores, right in front of co-workers, was open about it, bragged about it the entire time it was happening.
In front of the children as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And
I was talking to somebody and I was telling them about that, and they said, well, in front of the kids? I said, oh, of course. That's
but
what
people. Kids, I'm like, when it starts, go somewhere else. You have to see it, so you don't have to hear it. You don't have to save me. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. Just
I have that clip somewhere.
We do not try to do anything to stop him, because if you do, you may get hurt. Right. I did not want that. So
I have that on. I can't remember where it is, but I'll find it. But yeah, Don clearly states that he could absolutely hear that happening.
A video on my channel. You could go to mine and it'll automatically play it.
Yeah, it's just a terrible thing. And so how often were you hearing those kind of fights going on?
For theirs, you wouldn't hear it. It's like their insulation in that basement was quite well. I think that's where most of it took place in their type of violence before. So you'd hear the kids crying about it or coming outside or getting one another, whatever, more often than anything, right? You would hear him screaming and yelling at everybody, including the kids and such, and all of that. But I thought for years, honestly, the violence over on our hill was worse, just because it was extreme. It was frequent every day. You wondered, I did, was I leaving there in a body bag? Was today that day? I was told every day, depending on which method he was on at the time. Like, he always had these fantasies of which way he was going to murder me in those terms. And he would tell me, like, it was zip ties at one time. It was, those going on my neck, and watching light eyes, or doing this or doing that, or shooting me, or, just depended on what he was fantasizing about at the time. But he would stick on one thing for weeks, and then the abuse would kind of follow that. Like,
Right.
There's strangulation while he was thinking zip ties. There'd be more beatings with solid objects when he was thinking. It just depended, but every day I was, leading up to, even if nothing else happened, he's like, I just want to kill you. I want you dead. I want whatever. I'd love to see you. I'd just like to do whatever. And then eventually ramp himself up. It's just, so I heard that every day. And he would literally get mad at some guy at work, but then literally take off early and come home and beat me because he was mad at somebody else or somebody done something.
And that girl says, why wasn't he arrested for DV? Was it just we, like a lot of women, scared to report it?
I didn't have cell phone service. I didn't have home phone. Facebook was really my only method of communication. And if
Were you threatened though?
What?
Did he threaten you, like to say, hey, if you call the cops?
That's the thing. If he had ever caught me doing, that would have been it.
Yeah. I've heard that. So let me ask you about so what do you make of the Stop Daddy Stop? Did you say that you had heard that before?
Yeah. And I've heard
from Summer.
That from almost every child. One of the last things Little did, because she wouldn't speak to Hours for a couple of years before leaving there because he'd almost broken, and her dad as human being, and like she didn't want anything to do him, wouldn't speak except for like one word here and there, wouldn't respond to him. But one of the last things she did was kind of find her voice too. In the last few days we were around each other, and it was she got up and screamed, and she's like, stop, just stop, Dad, just stop, and kind of pushed him out of the cabin and locked the door on him. And Eldest stood guard to where he couldn't get back in, and he left for a bit. But yeah, it's kind of one of those, the kids in these situations
are trying to stop being abused, physical, or however, what was going on. Was it her or was it her mother?
You'd hear the kids yelling, stop, Dad, stop, or whatever, or just stop and things like that. Like, DV type things, but can I say what was, because,
Right.
However, there's many times, like, I would hear those things, and then I'd take Candace somewhere to safety, or after he took off, because usually after he did the worst things, he would end up late that night. That's how you always knew he was going on a Knoxville run, is he would then, because Don never left the hill after dark. Once he came in from work and had alcohol, he did not touch the little car. He didn't go back out of there. And so later in the night, what you'd hear is the rocks kind of moving as he snuck off in like neutral. And that was how you knew he'd be gone for at least 3 or 4 days. And there were times in there, like, he'd randomly take one of the kids with him, and they'd call Candace, and from like the truck being trapped in it or whatever for 2 or 3 days, and nobody could figure out where they were at. And Don doing whatever he was doing in motels, hotels, smoking down, and the kids terrified and left the vehicle hungry and whatever else. And, there were all these things, right? And Candace, she'd take her somewhere, whatever, and she'd say she was reporting and whatnot. Things.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because I've heard that phone call when Candace was calling 911, and it seemed and I don't want to speculate on it because I couldn't really hear everything that well, but there seemed it was chaotic, but it also seemed like it may have been something that has happened before. And one of the things that really has always bothered me with this case is that people always say, what is Dawn's past or Candace's past have to do with Summer going missing? And to be honest with you, in the most polite way, I find that about as ignorant as possible, because to me, it has everything to do with it. It has everything to do with what's going on. And, so let me ask you this. How'd you learn about the Knoxville connections? Was it, I mean, what was it? Was it dope runs? Was it prostitutes? I mean, in your opinion, or what you had heard, you know?
About it. And I know where he's going because Candace had told he had said there for the first couple of years when I was trying really hard to get along in a super neighborly way, like he would then write letters about how sorry he was and put them in the box. He read them to me sometimes and whatnot if I'd be around up there. And I thought that was weird, but okay, whatever. And there was always like a religious uptake too after each one of his runoffs, right? But and then throughout the years that got to where it didn't seem to be the case. He just went and then he'd be back and there wasn't this super sorry, and then the DV didn't have to connect to it in any way either. He would just sneak off in the night, and then I'd know by the next morning, Candace would be like, hey, did you hear Donnelly? I'm like, yep. And we'd know that he would be gone. You know, it's just like Monster, he had his patterns too. And so in that way, we knew when each were doing their runoffs or whatever it was, you know, but yeah.
Okay.
But they were pretty open about it. Plus, everybody around the area knew, you know. So, and that's why, like on here, I'd mentioned that and that goofy Knoxville traffic. He wanted to pretend was coming and going that he slung mud at too, which is like just full on imagination station, and everybody in the area had a good laugh at. And so I mentioned that on here, and then at nights when he come over here and did the N-word bomb on you for like hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't guess he wanted that heard, and he took some exception, had him thinking all kinds, and he come over and just full on laid into you.
Yeah, you know, I mean, he as it's interesting, you know, he tends to head to, I mean, you know, look, to be
imaginary traffic saying it was somebody else's from, I believe, Knoxville, okay, but put it on somebody else and said, conveniently enough, all the men in it were real classy, but that they were black men. And it was like this Scarface type, you know, giant Cadillac, black. Yeah, it was just movie scene ass. Everybody in the community was like, man, did the detectives ask you today about? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, did they laugh with you about it? Like, because I cracked up, girl. And I'm like, I know, we all cracked up because, you know, and then when I mean, it was the goofiest thing. That is not something that would go unnoticed in that area. And I mean, he was just making up things at that point. Like, we were all just gobsmacked at that point with the level of crap that was.
And I mean, did you ever confront him or them about it?
About what?
The lying and kind of the trying to pawn off, like, hey, this is it's them.
Like, Candace was in the road one day, and I was like, girl, I get it. I know the peppermint flower. What, like, I don't care about it. I understand y'all trying to make yourself look. I don't care. All right. But if it'll help somewhere, I'll come public about the scream, and I know it'll break your timeline. And then now looking back, that's when she kind of changes, because I don't think until around that era she actually knew what time the scream had taken place. Until then, she was trying to use it to fit into her time, because I don't think we really had a time for a long time after. Whereas law enforcement had it like, you know, immediately almost. So, I was like, I know it's going to kind of break whatever timeline you're going, but if it'll help Summer, you know, I'll do whatever needs to be done. But there were times there I was like, girl, I get it. Y'all trying to be like, hey, we're not whatever, but like, girl, like, just knock that off. Yeah. And she wouldn't disagree with me. That I was like, you know, that's bullshit. But, you know, knock it off. There's no disagreement there. Never an F you crazy neighbor or something, you know, that it's all the truth, you know. Nope. It was just, you know. And but yeah, I mean,
You know,
yeah,
you
it's
and
like,
I had a conversation because I was very curious about the 4 days that Dawn left, and I thought it was within the first week. You were correct; it was not within the first week. It was between the second and third prayer vigil, which was close to 3 weeks or so.
yeah, it was about the time they popped positive and the boys were taken.
Okay, what did Candace say anything to you about that?
I think in like maybe real time there was like a thing where he was gonna take off. So I don't know. At that point, I can't remember. I think there was maybe chat of it, but yeah, there's receipts right here somewhere for all the dates because that wasn't the only that like weird stuff was happening, right? And we were also trying to keep our distance because they were acting real funky. Plus, at the point that was occurring were the kind of the last days of Monster's severe abuse of us, right? And
Yeah.
then there around that period also I had run because we were there and I had kids in the motel and all these other things occurring, and then right after some of those takeoff dates or when some of the tweakers are there at the house up there chasing shadow people, they later get on cam and everybody else is talking about it was my son and it wasn't. No, you know, it was chaos, Josh. So there
And
was
I mean, he was gone, right? I mean, he was like, because apparently, and you know, I talked to Mary about this as well. His folks were trying to get a hold of him. Nobody could get a hold of him. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody really knew what he was doing. He wasn't responding. Although he did, Robin on an interview with Chris McDonough said that she convinced him to come back because of the optics. It looked bad or something like that.
I felt like they were actually saying something at a picnic table or near it, and somebody caught him on camera at one of the vigils talking about something with him being gone.
Okay. And so he just kind of disappeared.
Is not in the first. Yeah, I know he didn't leave in the first week or anything, but
Yeah.
anyway, I know that there was moments in there where definitely a lot of you know, extracurricular substances were present. And because of the amount of tweakers, and then they had all the people coming and going to help fix up the house, they were hanging around from like almost the time summer vanished until, I mean, for months. You know, some of the same players are, I'm like, just twitching, man.
You ever
And
hear of any of the kids ever falling down those stairs or anything?
no, if you ever walk down them, for me, I mean, they're such a short flight anyway, and they're just very tight quartered. I don't know how you'd fall down.
Were you ever in the basement before? Did you ever go down there? Had you ever been in there?
Yeah, throughout the years.
Was there a couch in front of the door?
You know, throughout visits up there and stuff, like, and see, we had given them a piece of blue couch, and I thought that's maybe what everybody was talking about. But anyway, I know that certain times we pull up in like the truck or Jeep or something like that over there, and they would open the basement door. So I don't know when that would have been in front of the door. Monster would have more of an idea of that.
Jose
House.
said it was there when he was there.
Yeah, see, I wasn't hanging out over there when Jose was there. That was the full tilt cancer treatment stage.
Yes,
Couldn't
gotcha.
even see my own kids and especially young ones.
Right.
And so I was very much in that cabin and nowhere else. And very rarely at that point did I even like go out because of the radiation levels and how long it takes to wind down your system and the half-life of everything and all that.
So you gave them a blue couch. Is that what you're saying? Or did you give them
The whole section we had, it was blue. And there was a piece of it we couldn't use or something, and Monster gave to them, and I can't remember if it was like a big section or one of the corner sections to it. You'd have to ask him if ever you get the chance. But it may be in, I'm pretty sure it's in the receipts here, because, yeah. And I did the other day, we talked about something, and I was like, I'll look, and I forgot to look.
Do you know if it was like a pull-out couch or?
The sectional did have that feature, but I don't remember which piece we gave.
Interesting.
I
And it was
would have
blue.
And I know that that piece was not at our place. So I don't know. I have to go back through receipts, but I know about them. See which is what.
Do you kind of recall when that was?
A couple of years before.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So it wasn't very old.
No. I mean, the sectional was an older set, but it looked brand new, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Any
anyway,
reason to throw that thing away? I mean, was it tore up or anything? Beat to hell?
no, absolutely not. It looked like brand new, straight out of somewhere, and it was like a light blue, had little white pinstripes on it. I can show you a picture of what the other ones look like.
Sure. Yeah. I'd love that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. Maybe they didn't like you anymore, so they got rid of the couch. I'm not sure. But Don says the couch is gone. And I don't know why. Not implying anything other than the couch that was in front of the door is gone. That was there. So, I find that interesting. Let me see here.
And yeah, I did go through treatment full COVID, yeah. And people are still impression that this is gone or that I'm not, whatever. And I have multiple health conditions, but also other cancer types and things. So,
Did they ever tell you? Did they ever tell you what they did with that couch?
Nope, and I didn't keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Not unless it's a random message I didn't even think about. It's come through at some point or something from somewhere.
I completely understand.
Like, I know that we offered him one piece. I think there was other things throughout the years.
Where'd you get the couch at?
The couch came from Monster's parents in the basement. They didn't want it down there anymore. The top when they get the leather sectional, maybe.
Gotcha.
He wanted it, but it wouldn't fit in small farmhouse style things. So I only kept I think the little corner pieces, but there were quite a few of those. And I think there was one piece offered to them for them to come get or something, but I don't remember which piece that was. But I know it's in the receipts.
Interesting. Well, let me see here. One last thing here. The dogs didn't hit scent on 110 Ben Hill Road property, so I truly don't believe she passed away on the property. Doesn't mean there wasn't an accident. Let's clear up a rumor. People were saying something about a dog scent at your feet. I mean, do you want to explain that? I don't believe any of it, but if you want to clear it up.
People took and twist what I said, or maybe I just wasn't clearing up with it. But the first dog in that evening before dark, or right around dusk anyway, it came in and some things going on, and I have to be really careful about what I say here. But as it was coming by us, they didn't come and say, hey, the dogs are coming, right? But it's common sense eventually they're going to,
Sure.
At that point, it was like we finished searching. We were told to stay in one spot. Here come, my dogs from up the hill. They're wanting to hang out,
Yeah.
So they were just like hanging out around us near our feet and things like that. But this dog wasn't, And this one was a little maybe easier look, I just want to be careful what I'm saying here.
I understand.
All right, but it did not hit at my feet. But I've been like, well, this handler stopped at my, because he did. He stopped near us and he was bitching about certain things. Okay, and part of that was his dog was like sniffing the asses of my dogs and fucking around with other things. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it was also his frustration with other things. It had nothing to do with us. The dog didn't hit on anything. The dog was like sniffing asses and shit was going. And I really want to be careful here. But it's just that dog didn't hit on my feet. All right. And I'm sure my shoes and everything been,
Right.
confiscated in my clothing, and none of that was. I'm pretty sure I would have been taken in for interrogations or something if that was the case. No, the dog did not alert on me at all. It was just fucking off, man.
Right.
It wasn't so much that the dog stopped, it was that the handler stopped a bitch. Just happened to be near our location, and then the dog thing,
Yeah,
but
and tell me if we shouldn't bring this up, but you and I had a conversation about PIs before, and Tim Mullen. Where did Don and Candace know Tim before Summer went missing?
I have no idea. I'd never heard of that dude either until he come in over here.
Interesting.
Never heard of him either. Just like we'd never heard of Robin or David, or they never even talked about the church, dude.
Right. I understand that.
And they make like go in here, and that's what nobody's getting. He says, well, like he says, I think the behavior panel should make Dotson know he hadn't been there long, just a few months, right? Like 3 or 4 months. But then, well, that's not much longer in actuality than Dawn had been there, right? Because if you space it, Dawn was gone to Utah for months and months. Before that, he couldn't have attended but a month or two, right?
Right.
And he comes back and they're there for a couple months. Even though he makes it like they went XYZ for that, like, no, it's not possible because Utah's in the middle there. So he didn't go there much longer than Dotson did. So why was he making it like, oh, this guy just came in and now my daughter, and like, dude, you just really came there and your daughter vanished. What are you talking about? No, but yeah, we never heard anything really about that one. Now, the other churches throughout the years they attended and did all kinds of things at whatever. I mean, obviously knew more about their attendance at those places and stuff just because it's middle of the community, obviously. And they were Baptists and all that, and then they apparently swapped over to SDA. I don't know. And they got a new Subaru in the middle of there somewhere, and I don't know.
So have you met Don and Candace's PIs?
I have, yes.
And what do you think of them? I mean, did they question you?
They didn't question. Like, I wouldn't meet them for the longest time. Candace had asked, and I kind of BS'd, and I knew it would be like a conflict if there were, but I was like, well, I'm pretty confident. Just because past things and line-oriented things and stuff, I won't be used for, like stand purposes anyway. So, but I thought it important to get certain things down at that point because of stuff that was happening and distrust factors I felt, and the lack of, I don't know, all kinds of things, but and the way the stuff was playing out with Monster in certain areas and things, and I was like, man, especially with my health at that point, I was like, if I don't make it, somebody's got to get certain things down,
Right.
And Candace lied to him about what they were actually talking to me about, like all these things, much like she did everybody. Things she already knew had been cleared, like Yeah, and look, it's that way with her, man, but it's much like you did Nerdy Addict. Everything you do for them, they'll turn around and it, it's like the night she's describing the Nerdy Addict that they were over there helping me move, and my mom suddenly showed up in a red truck, and she didn't know there was one till then. BS. We've been coming and going for weeks in that thing. She'd seen it before throughout the past year or two before that. And then she tells Dawn, yeah, and it even had a ladder rack on it. It's like, okay, if it just showed up super genius, then how would you know if it did or did not ever have a ladder rack? And it never did, by the way. But she lied to people and telling people that they were over there helping me move. No, that was the day the PIs were there, so I could help her in Summer and the Kate, right? And instead, she turns it later on for YouTube and Tragedy Pimps and Nerdy Addict into this lie about how, it's one of those, we're the good people. We were helping Jodiesue move, and then her mom shows up in this red truck and it sucks, right? And I'm like, you liar, And that truck had been cleared long before that, dude, by a team. Like, I was the one that told them it existed, gave them the address. They left from there and came here immediately. And I gave them a date on the last time they've been anywhere near that road. And since my brother was most likely traveling, they probably have GPS for it that day as well. So I don't know what to tell anybody. That truck has been looked at, been cleared, blah, blah, blah. And she knew all this, man. It's months later. Here she is doing all this. She's telling people that Dodson had all these Dobbs had all these campsites all over the place, or he camped out. No, he didn't. He never got the chance to camp anywhere.
Right.
The place he ever was over on that piece, connected to 125, not 110. So she was lying to everybody, and she still does. And then you have her at a certain point being visually recorded by Nerdy Addict too when they first meet her church leader out. And she's giving out my name like it's the police questioner. She's like, oh, Jody. And I found that piece the other night while I was doing my own live. I was like, whoa, what? And I think it's Michelle that has it up, and I found it. And there she's going. Her name's Jodiesue Brown. And they said when they pulled up, she was fighting with some over. She was crying and stuff. And it was the morning after she'd been on here fighting with Dawn in one of the more notorious fights. And that's the one I lost my whole everything about and went off about on her Facebook. And then I called her that night, worried about her safety and stuff. By the next morning, Nerdy Addict's meeting her. She's crying and sobbing in a car fight when Dawn gets out and goes, yeah, like the suspect said, her name's Jodiesue Brown, and they just live right across the driveway. And I'm like, dude. So every time you do anything for these people, they just
Can we share that conversation just like between, we don't have to show anything, but like the reason, the real reason that Dawn and Candace had PIs according to Candace.
Yeah, I mean, Candace seemed to think, and I didn't realize this till later on, because of things I'd rather not mention now, but that were receipts in real time of it. I just didn't catch on at that point, but Candace seems to think and got them from the get-go thinking that they were to help her and Dawn, not hang.
Specifically, it said we're going to make sure that we don't hang for something we didn't do.
Yeah, but I can tell you that what she thinks is, I do think the PIs have the best of intentions where it concerns.
What do they think happened?
I don't know, and they can't say.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jodiesue, we've been going over 2 hours. I appreciate you being here. We'll do this again, and this was first and foremost. I just want to say thank you, because I know that you receive a lot of, we all do, but you specifically receive a lot of hate. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people, women especially, really took notice last night when you stood up to Dawn in the way that most people would want to. And it was, and I was, for one, was very happy that you were able to confront him and to let that out, because I can't imagine the hell of being even even them insinuating that you or your family had something to do with this over and over and over as a distraction. Even again last night, Don once again weaponized the disappearance of his daughter to try and counteract something that you were saying about dope runs and, you know, a slew of other things. So I appreciate that. And it's you changed a lot of people's minds about you, because we were all rooting for you. We were all watching it and we were all cheering for you, because it's nice to see somebody take the power back. And I think that that's what you did. And so I appreciate that.
These are people that have pushed so hard they caused my grieving mom, who just lost my brother, as we all had, to have a heart attack. I've had one in the past couple of months, and I guess I know the day it kind of happened on, because I just knew that was it, man. I couldn't even reach for the phone knowing I needed to call an ambulance, you know. I was done. It was over. I knew. But
Yeah.
I walked it off, and I found out recently on the machines that as indeed what has happened. I had a heart attack, and it's because of a lot of the targeting and things. And, you know that these people are responsible for pushing everyone around us, or trying to get them even like murdered or harmed. That's terrible. And I'm fed up with what they've done to that community and others and everybody else. This isn't funny.
You think this will be solved?
I do.
Is it just a hunch, or you just
No.
Gotcha.
I think very much that they're absolutely working Summer's case constantly. I know these men and women care for her, and I've seen what they're going through face to face, and the care and concern in their voices, and that she's not a game to them. They are sick of the YouTube stuff, obviously, social media stuff. I
bet.
I can see all of our roles in that in ways, you know.
Sure.
You know, but I'm sick of the games and the nonsense that hides the truth and the reality and the basics and the facts around Summer, and getting to the bottom of everything, you know. And I don't care how far they want to push. I'm gonna stand firm until there's answers. But I know in my heart that they're gonna find Summer, and they're going to make a rest. I have every bit of faith in the world in that.
I think so too. I truly do. Jodiesue, thank you for being here, and we'll talk soon.
Gosh, there's something really important to me, and if Chris could maybe help me find a way, if you'll talk to him.
Sure.
You know, they've always told me to wait. Like, pieces will come, some stuff will fade, just wait. I've always thought it an important thing. But the conversation that was being had at such loud levels, I thought that another person was in the vehicle with Candace. I know that I heard it word for word. It wasn't faint. Turns out it was Dawn, obviously. And I was very confused when she pulls up to me and there's nobody. Like, I scanned the vehicle, you know, and then eventually Dawn pipes up on the speakerphone in her hand, you know, and then I was like, oh, right. But I know that I heard that, like, verbatim. I know, I mean, it's like right there on the cusp, right? If I could almost call it up, but I feel like it's important. There's something that keeps telling me it's important, and I don't know if it's what I'm trying so hard to get to it won't come out. Can you ask him if there's anybody back there at Cold Case that specializes in trying to get to stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he's watching. But yeah, and that's something that, you know, I could put you guys in contact and
because I'll tell you, whatever was happening in that conversation, was more emotion than I've seen out of either of them throughout this, unless it was hoaxes and games and BS. It was
Right.
more emphatic and more whatever than them going, oh, so you're telling me somebody took my baby girl, and the emotion kind of showed. I mean, looking back at all these things, there was something about whatever they were saying. I could hear it clear as day all the way as she made her way down the driveway. And then they stopped. She must have told him hush, because there was no noises. Well, that's why I was so confused and scanned the inside of the vehicle looking for another human being to be in there. Right?
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe important. And I'm
Absolutely.
clawing to death trying to get it out. And if there's some expert back there, cold case, that can help me with that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Oh, definitely. We'll talk tomorrow, and then we'll see what we can do for you. And so absolutely, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, Jodiesue. Get some rest. Like I said, you stood up for not just yourself last night, but for a lot of women, even men, anybody. Look, I wanted to tell Don off too. I just took it because it doesn't really bother me, but at the same time, you just kind of want to say, like you're a dick face or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and he is, by the way, the way that he talks to people is absolutely disgusting. And the fact that people defend him talking like that is absolutely disgusting too. Everything else aside, talking like that to people in such a demonstrative way is just.
Well, I think a lot of people took it as I was over talking because they're like, PG should have made it to where they took turns and said the problem is you cannot do that with his variety of monster. Or it leaves them room to create and spin their narrative and lull people and do the gaslighting and the word salad and to direct. But if you make them do it's more of it's like riding a bull, and he. Yeah, it's a little different, but I guess you're used to, but
Where's the somebody said Chris is in here. What's the question? I'm I lost. I didn't see his comment.
at the end of the night, could you please ask people to put out the help hand signal, please, to help
Sure.
other women and children and victims being kind, because it can do a lot of things, including for domestic violence victims, especially over text and things, to where they couldn't make a call that could save them, but they could maybe tap a button and be visually seen making that hand signal. And even in areas like Hawkins County, which takes 45 minutes to 2 hours to get a police call, they can maybe get help and their abusers are actually caught in real time,
Right.
or their kidnappers, and in time to help them and save them and see justice for what's being done to them without the abuser knowing or killing them trying to reach out for help.
There's Chris McDonough's question right there at the bottom of the screen. Jodiesue Brown, who's your number one suspect? In your opinion. Don't be shy. Mine too.
Tell you that by my fourth thought that day, as Candace was kind of driving off from me to supposedly call the police, etc., but she ran the next neighbor, I was like, man, Dawn's coming here and took her. Right? And I'm not saying it just because I'm salty, but that was kind of my first,
You said that?
I'm saying that's what, by the fourth thought I had of like, what the hell's going on with Summer, even before it hit the creek, it was man, like Dawn's just come in here and took her, because I knew about the DCS case and all that, and I was confused throughout the day with certain vehicles that showed up, like when he showed up in the shiny red, looked like it just been washed Subaru and I was like, well, wait a minute, then what was the red flash going up the driveway earlier? And all these things later, it just didn't make sense. But I honestly can't answer McDonough's question because I have a couple.
You think it was an abduction by a stranger?
I think the chances of that are very slim. I don't think anybody would have been able to get close enough to Summer had they been a full stranger.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
I
All
don't
right.
think
Well,
would
look,
be living away. I don't think if it was a stranger, any of that, because I know even neighbors she knows, when she comes a little far off the hill, like to the, if you're coming into the Ben Hill, and the first part of their hills right here, um, even if she was coming down just a little bit on it, and others that knew her be like, "Hey," she would just right back up. She go, and like she knew better, you know what I mean? So I don't know that. I don't think a stranger would have been able to get close enough to her. If it was like top of the hill situation or something. Now, if she had indeed wandered off or something down near the main road, I don't know. But yeah, I think there are other closer suspects and others who had been near her in the weeks prior that could have made friends with her and things, or made her feel comfortable, or enough to get near enough. But also, statistics are statistics, and usually these things are committed by known. I know the stats. With Summer, I think they're a little higher as far as strangers go, just because of all the out-of-state traffic looking at properties, the brush and tree trimmers, things like that. But it makes them a little higher than average for her being, but for me, I'm going to go with what law enforcement says, which are all possibilities are on the table. I do think that foul play is definitely, which for me that encompasses quite a bit. But what I do not believe is that Summer walked off into those woods never to be seen or heard from. Nobody on earth will ever believe that. I know better. And I know animal attack's not it, because I know how good those dogs were for the feds and things.
right.
Been sent. I know where animal prints were found, how kind of old they were. I know all kinds of little neat little things, and I'm telling you, no. But she didn't just wander off into those woods, never be seen and heard from again. And if she went into those woods, it wasn't by herself.
I would agree with that. Well, I appreciate it, Jodiesue. We'll talk tomorrow, and thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it, Josh. And if you don't care, just hand signal, whatever.
Well, and if anybody has the link to that as well.
And Summer, please always share out Summer
Chris, I have
picture.
another question. I can't see his questions. Hold on. What's the question? Yeah. I'm sure you can. I'm sure we'll talk anyway. Anyway, thank you, Jodiesue. We'll talk soon. And it was a great interview. It's a lot to process, and it was a really good Chris needs a wrench. Yeah. I don't think you would like one very much. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you being here. Chris, question number one scenario. We'll ask that. Sorry, Chris, I didn't see it. Yeah, that was very interesting. Once again, thank you for the super chats and stickers and the new members, also the new subscribers. Thank you just for liking, sharing this. It's always appreciated. You guys are always awesome. And so thank you for being respectful. I thought it would be much worse than that, but it really wasn't bad. Wasn't really that bad. It's a good thing.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
There is no investigation. This boy has.
It's not, really? It is to me.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
But I had to put her on the side and where
I'm gonna do what I gotta do for me and my boys and my kids.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
There is no investigation. This boy has.
It's not, really? It is to me.
I believe it goes something.
Right. Idiot.
I've done my best. It's hard, you know, that's real tough.
But I had to put her on the side and where it was the boys.
I'm gonna do what I gotta do for me and my boys and my kids.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
Live from the NBD Production Studios, you're in the lab with your host, Joshua Diaz.
There is no investigation. This boy has.
It's not, really? It is to me. But I had to put her on the side and where it was the boys. But I had to.
There is no investigation.
Don't say any F's and stuff.
But I had to put her. But I had to put her on the side and where it was the boys.